I want to give you an update on China because the stock market is crashing over there. Let me show you what happened on Monday. So here's what's going on. The Hang Seng Index, which is like the S&P here in the US, fell by 6.4% on Monday alone. This is the biggest one-day drop in over a decade, so it's been pretty brutal. The other markets in China, they took a dive as well. The Hang Seng Index is down nearly 35% this year, and more pain is expected. Foreign investors are rushing to get their money out of China. They're calling it an exodus. So look at the billions in daily outflows just over the past few days. Okay, so that's the situation. Now let me tell you why this is happening, what's going on. This past weekend, Xi Jinping became president of China for a third term. So congrats to Xi. In China, you're only allowed to be president for 2 terms. However, Xi Jinping thought that that was a silly rule, so he got rid of it in 2018. Xi's got another term, and he now remains in power for another 5 years. On Sunday, Xi Jinping told the people of China they're on a journey to prosper as a modern socialist country. Xi laid out his vision of common prosperity and an expansion of state-owned enterprises. So basically, it was a nerve-wracking speech for all privately owned businesses in all industries. Xi solidified his power by electing 4 new appointments to the 7-person decision-making body for the country. The elected officials are not pro-business, they're pro-Xi Jinping. So they're gonna do whatever he says. So Xi now has a complete monopoly of unquestionable power. So any chance of checks and balances in China died this weekend. So nobody's gonna challenge Xi or question his policies. Now, Xi Jinping has a history of being unfriendly towards tech companies in China. Xi's been coming up with stricter policies and regulatory restrictions that are harmful to Chinese tech. So Chinese tech companies are complaining that this has been suppressing their growth. But the companies obviously they have no choice but to comply. Non-compliance results in expensive violation fees, like the $2.8 billion fine that Alibaba got hit with last year. So it's basically like having an angry boss just breathing down your neck at all times. And if you do anything to upset the boss, then you're gonna get penalized big time. So when Xi got his third term, the financial markets in China, they didn't like this and they reacted poorly. The Hang Seng Index fell 6.4% in one day, and the Hang Seng Tech Index fell by 9.7%. Alibaba Group, Baidu, JD, they were down more than 10%. New Oriental Education and Tech fell by 20%. So it was a bloodbath. With Xi Jinping in power for another term and basically no one to speak up against him, private enterprises are concerned that Xi's policies will continue to slow Chinese growth in 2023. Foreign investors rushed to get their money out of the country. There was a net outflow of $2.5 billion on Monday alone. This is the biggest one-day outflow since people started tracking that data 8 years ago. Other policies by Xi that will remain in effect include the zero COVID policy. So this is unsurprisingly expected to hurt the Chinese economy. It is expected that Xi will keep the zero COVID policy in place for all of next year. If cases start to pop up in whatever city, then that city will lock down. However, they're not calling it lockdowns. They're calling it at-home stillness. And the Chinese government is giving orders to stop all unnecessary movements. And I want to point this out. Instead of calling it a zero COVID policy, it's now changed to become a dynamic zero COVID policy. The Chinese government is saying that this new policy, it's more scientific and more precise. This new and more advanced lockdown policy is superior to the old one because with a dynamic policy, the government can respond more dynamically depending on the situation. So if that sounds vague and stupid to you, that's because it is. For that reason, the stock market fell and people are concerned because there's no clarity. And it doesn't matter if you're in the US or in China. Lack of clarity is bad for the stock market, the fear of the unknown. So the hardcore financial analysts in the stock market that work for institutions, they just plug numbers into their equations to make their stock market predictions. And if there's a number missing, then they freak out. So lack of clarity is bad for the stock market. So you can expect the dynamic zero COVID policy to remain in effect for the foreseeable future. So this means restrictions on travel, required mass testing multiple times a week, and at-home stillness, also known as lockdowns. The People's Daily, which is the government-sponsored newspaper in China, said that China's dynamic zero COVID approach is the right approach and China must stick with it. At the same time in China, while there's turmoil in their financial markets and COVID-causing lockdowns and industrial stoppages, the real estate market continues to degrade in China. So this is a big deal because the property sector accounts for 1/5 of China's GDP. Average new home prices in the top 70 cities in China fell again in August. So it's been 4 consecutive months of decline, and it's been the fastest drop in new home prices since 2015. Now, most people have heard of Evergrande. That was the biggest one that made all the headlines, but it's not just them in trouble. 30 Chinese property companies and developers have now defaulted on their international debt payments. The contagion is now spreading into the banking sector and construction projects are stopping. So look at the growth rate of investment in real estate development over the past 2 years. So clearly not good. Xi Jinping is taking action to stabilize the property markets. The government is cutting interest rates, relaxing purchasing requirements, among other policies. However, it's not been enough to stop the decline. So that's your Chinese updates. I hope this saves you the time and brings you up to speed. Please subscribe. I thank you for the support and I wish you a very nice day. Please take care.